for a park.
I have plans.
Connect it down to Lower Salford and come on up from the bridge.
I have plans to go down to this part of the it's beside from around and turn the other direction. So if you see it a little bit, yes, back to Geiger, right up to and across the street. We own a big fairway in this block which connects to which is a piece that we got between Sharon's house and the Thorne's daughter to Norman Schlegler's farm. We own it.
Yeah, but you'll see some of these pictures. When you're down along that Branch Creek, it is beautiful. I mean, beautiful.
Boss. All right.
Hey Ted, one other thing. This is for another time, maybe next year, but we want to donate that. That's 1848 Township, and well, the township, but the whole Montgomery County. All the names are on there as a census back then. So
Saw you in. Boy, they were all excited to see you. She's on her way. She's on her way. Good.
it's one you get the whole
pretty cool,
form
huh?
ready to go. If you can
And I know
promise
here's
it,
what's
it'll be
crazy.
on the wall.
He starts telling me about it because you mentioned. I'm like,
They want it down at Frankfurt Heritage, but they want to roll it up because we don't want to put that on the
no,
wall.
we're just golf buddies.
I'm a platinum blonde. He's a real blonde. He was a real blonde. I wasn't.
He's our best man.
Oh, he never said that.
He might not be too proud of that.
Well, yeah, let's keep it. You see if it works out.
Okay, I don't know what you're
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm not starting.
It's exciting to see all of you here this evening, and thank you for joining us.
Is this Mike?
On behalf of the Upper Salford Township Historical Society, I'd like to welcome you, and we're going to do this from a historical standpoint. Tonight's presentation will start off with the Lord's Prayer, and we ask that you all rise and take that as a moment of silent meditation, because that's how this particular land was set up in terms of faith. Our Father, who art in heaven,
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
and Rick. There he is.
Yeah, sorry up and down. If we could ask everybody to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now I get it. Sorry about that. Now you can sit down, relax. Tonight's presentation is one that's going to be very interesting. The family, as you can see, has been here for 9 generations. I don't know if they're the oldest, but they are definitely one of the oldest families in our township, and we are very fortunate for all these wonderful things that they have for us. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Greg Landis, his wife Kathy, Jim Landis, and Christine Landis from the family that's still surviving. So who gets this?
Okay.
Jim?
Thank you. No, I got one. Thank you. All right, so, whoa, you can maybe turn that down a little bit. Pastor Ed, wherever. All right, thanks to the Upper Salford Historic Society for inviting us, and for Tabor Church and Pastor Ed Van Artsdale to host this and to be such a great partner for the Historic Society. And thanks for everybody for coming out. It was a great turnout. I know a lot of you, and if I don't know you, please introduce yourself afterward. We have a lot of stuff. This is a dog and pony show and show and tell. So I want you all to take, if you are interested, take a look at the stuff afterwards. Some of it's pretty rare, and I guess I should thank our ancestors for being such pack rats and keeping all this stuff, but that's how the Germans, Mennonite, seemed to be. They were very frugal, didn't waste. So there's a lot of very old things here going back to the 1700s. All right, I also got to thank my wife. She put together this PowerPoint. I mean, it's like PBS quality, in my opinion. So I'm going to try to peel through this, but we got a lot to cover. This is my family. I'm Greg Landis, my sister Christine, and my younger brother Jim. Jim lives at the house where my grandfather ended up after he wasn't on the farm, and he collected and saved all these artifacts. So Jim dumped them out one time a year or so ago. He found them and tucked away, and that started this whole process. So this is what's laid out here in front of you. The bottom row is 1,700 deeds from the 1700s. There's 5 parchments, deeds that go back from the 1700s. The middle row was the 1,800 deeds from the 1800s. And then there's some of the really cool things are the drafts, which are the surveys and little drawings that as they were surveyed out. Some of those are in the frames. And then there was just a collection of other agreements, mortgages, loans, and receipts that were all handwritten. Next. We also have some family Bibles, pictures, and all kinds of other things that were saved, obituaries and things like that. Next. Yeah, so one of the things that's over here in this oval frame, this is a reverse curved glass painting. These were real common in the 1800s. They were done from a picture, but they were hand painted on the back of a curved glass. So kind of like a negative. I'm not really sure the process, but they were common back in the 1800s. So here you can see the farm as it was then with the house on the left. There was a carriage in the lane. This was the lane, and it was actually the road back then that came out. There was no Shelley Road, but this came up and it went from Burnfield, came across the creek, and went up to Salfordville. Then the middle there was kind of an equipment barn, and there was a little corral for pigs and stuff next to the barn. And this was a huge double bank barn. There was a silo here, and then there were some chicken coops and other things off to the side. Next. This is my dad's, this is where I grew up. This is on Shelley Road. This was the upper corner of the farm that he split off and built a house in 1956 or 57. I was 5 or 6 years old when we moved in here. It was right across. It was part of the farm property. It was kind of typical, I guess. My grandfather gave or sold to my mom this little plot of land. It wasn't quite an acre. My dad built the house there, and that's where we grew up. That's where my grandfather ended up. And at that point, there were 3 generations there. It was my grandfather, my mom, and for a while myself in that house. Jim lives there, my brother Jim, over here. That's a picture in 2023. He's gone minimalist there, took out the shrubs, but it keeps it very nice. It keeps it in good shape. Next. No star. The star went away, but yeah, my dad was proud of that star. Right next to it was part of the property as well. This was the diving unit that Sam had worked the deal out. Whether he donated the ground, I don't know. He was very big in the fire company and donated the ground to the diving unit. And we're glad that he did. That's beautiful. This was another piece of property going down the hill, so there were 3 in a row. And this little block building, believe it or not, is where my Uncle Sam, you'll hear the story of him a little bit, but you see that door there? He lived in there. By himself. He was a single guy at the time and very unique. But that's where he lived. That's what it looks like now, 2023. Next. Okay, so this was a big, big help. This was my great aunt Mamie Kulp Metz. She wrote this down somewhere around in the 70s, and it was her memory going back to Germany. So when we say 9 generations, she has 8 generations. That's her, which is my grandfather. So we're going to start, and when I go through this, I'm going to read these things as we go through the guys and connect to the deeds. But I'm going to say because, well, turn to the next one. I'm going to use this as our guide, kind of. So she starts with Germany. Yeah, I was supposed to read these. So this is what she wrote. This is from her handwritten notes. Dillman, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Dillman from Great Aunt Mamie. The Kulps came from Wolfsheim in the Palatinate in Germany. Not sure if it's still there, as there's only a little town, but it was near Heidelberg and Mannheim. The Palatinate is what we would call a state in the U.S. Palatinate is the English name, and in German, it's called the Rheinflats. It's along the Rhine River. Next. A lot of you here probably have ancestors that came. My Landis family came more down here in Switzerland, but the Palatinate was between Germany and France along the Rhine River. There's Holland. Okay, next. Which one are we on, Kathy? Okay, this is the family tree, and a couple things to notice here. So we're starting over here in 1648 in Germany. Reverend Dillman Kolb never came to this country. So one of the things you're going to notice, you got Dillman, and this is in the line. Now there's a lot of other Kolbs. Jacob, Heinrich, Jacob, Henry, which was Heinrich, Henry, and Reinhard, who had brothers Jacob and Henry, figure. So I'm going to say, when we get to this, Jacob Gen 1, Henry Gen 2, so you can kind of see where we're at. But that's the lineage, and you also can see the only one that's outside of the German kind of names here is Sarah Van Sintern. And that's because when he came over on the boat, I think he met her. But anyway, she's from Holland. Everything else, Castle, Yoder, Zink, Landis, Frederick, Oberholzer, Landis. So you can see they kept a pretty tight community. All right, so they're coming over here in 1707. I don't know if you can read them, but 3 brothers came over, Jacob, Martin, Johannes. They immigrate to Philadelphia in 1707. Penn, okay, just for where we're at, this map was in 1700. And Penn had gotten the land from King Charles II in 1681. He made deals with the Indians to kind of vacate the land, and he did pay them a pittance. In 1682, he was making deals with the Indians. By 1700, this is Center City. He laid out in a very neat, the same roads that are there today, Market Street, Broad Street, but that's down here. That's Philadelphia. All around that is vacant land, which says here, the Liberty Land of Philadelphia City, which a lot of that became Fairmount Park. But right up here, German Township. So if you look at the names of this closely, they're almost all English. The English were the business people. The Germans were the worker bees. They got this little area here where a lot of them moved to, and they were just happy to get to new lands here and have all this opportunity, but they weren't going to stick around there long, because when you look out here, there's nothing right now. In 1700s, it's being bought and sold very quickly by these people. They were businessmen, but there was a lot of opportunity, so they're going to follow the creeks for the most part, the rivers and the creeks. Which one are we on here, Kathy? Okay. Yep. Yeah, the German, especially the Mennonites and the Anabaptists, were moving to Germantown. The English were the land barons. Now, we're going to first generation that came over. Jacob, one of the 3 brothers. So Jacob, this is a great Aunt Mamie. Jacob Kolb was born, I'll skip the May 21st part because dates are going to be enough. 1685, he married Sarah Van Sintern, was married on May 2nd in 1710 in the old log Mennonite meeting house in Germantown. He died in 1739 at his farm in Skippack. from the effects of a beam falling on him while he was pressing apple cider. Not sure of their burying place, but most likely Lower Skippack Mennonite Church Cemetery. That's what Aunt Mamie wrote. So this is just a stock picture showing you, though, if a beam from that press would fall on you, you could see how it would kill you. And he had fathered 9 kids, though, by that time, and he was 54 years old when he died. Next. So one of his brothers, younger brother, came over 10 years later, and his name was Dillman, just like the father. And this is from Salford Mennonite. Dillman was the first minister in 1691, and, well, let me read here what it says. He was the younger brother of Jacob. He immigrated 10 years later in 1717. He was the first minister. And Christopher Dock was the first school teacher and lived in Upper Salford at the time. And if you look at these names, you'll see they're all the names that we still have around today, all the Frauenbach, go down the list. And so this was the Mennonite community moving up. It was still pretty wilderness, though, at that time. Next, this map here. Now, this is an earlier map, but you're going to see throughout this and on all these deeds, all the spelling is wonky. It goes all over the place. This one here is Pennsylvania in 1690s. Okay. This is an earlier map, and you can see the spelling there. Realize at the time there were many different Indian tribes, English, German, and Dutch, and they were all speaking their own language and trying to communicate. In addition, many, or most even, could not read or write. Hence, there were lots of differently spelled versions of names. But you also see in here, again, this 1690s, so right before, as Philadelphia was developing, it emphasizes the importance of the rivers, the Delaware, the 2 main ones, the Delaware and the Susquehanna, and then the branching off. Next. So at that time, we live in the Indian Valley. There were definitely, it was easy living for the indigenous people. The Lenape tribe of the Delaware lived in this area, and they were being moved out under agreement. But go on. Next. But not all were ready to move out. And so in researching all this, we came across I noticed that in 1728, the Kulp brothers, along with some of the other 42 landowners in Skippack, and that was all of Skippack at that time, including Henry and Peter Pennypacker, petitioned Governor Gordon asking for protection from a threatened attack of the Unami Indians. Pennypacker owned 2,300 acres. It stretched from all along the Perkiomen up into Upper Salford. Perkiomen, so some of the words again, taken from the Indian tongue. Perkiomia, a place where the cranberries grow, and Skippack, a stagnant stream or a pool of water. Next. So this is just a sample of some of the arrowheads that we would find down on the farm. It was really plentiful, as a lot of the other places along the branch in Perkiomen. There's just 3 different types I thought were really cool. This one's sharp, and I have them here so you can see them. This was probably used for rabbits or birds. These were maybe for deer. These were a lot bigger and harder. That one still has a really sharp edge, a brown one. So that's just evidence of the Indians living along here. I came across this too. I thought it was interesting. So this is the Lenape tribe. They're still active in the Perkiomen Valley. 2 Perkiomen Valley schools have arboretums. And this tree, if you read that, 329-year-old swamp oak. And this was last year. So I think it's really remarkable. And it's the only thing of its kind in the country where 2 middle schools have these arboretums. Next. Okay, the first, so in 1732, okay, this is the old Goshenhofen Gemeine house, very near and dear to my heart. as well as a lot of people here. I just wanted to point out that this was a typical German architecture structure at the time. When you come in, you got all woods, Penn's woods, you got to clear the land. What do? You got plenty of lumber. So they would build, the first buildings would be a log cabin typically, and then there's plenty of rocks, and that would be the second structure they would build, generally would be stone. This uses both, and still standing. We're proud to take care of this building. But it shows what was going on at that time. Which we're running on here, 22. Okay, this was the first deed of 151 acres for 245 pounds. It's not deeded to the Kulps, but what you find with these deeds is when you purchase the property, you got the preceding deed that went with it. So this one here will become the Kulp farm. It was passed along when they bought the property. Next, I guess, the parchments. The parchments are made out of a skin, sheepskin or goat skin, I believe. They call them vellum, and probably a sheepskin. They're durable as anything. Really cool. Which one are we on here, Kathy? Okay. Yeah. So a couple things to note on this first deed, which is down here. This is William Antes of the Antes. Huh? Oh, Henry Antes. Henry Antes. He was a register of deeds for Philadelphia and lived over in the Antes, the Goshenab historians have taken care of, the Antes property. You can notice that they signed and sealed everything with a wax seal, as you can see down here. The other thing that you'll notice is if the men could write, which was possible, they're typical, the women generally at this period couldn't. So it says her mark. Someone signed, one of the guys would write her name, there's her mark, was a plus. That's Catherine, Frederick. Next. Yeah, and they're all done with a quill and ink. And when you look at these, the writing is phenomenal in some of these. It's just beautiful. It's a work of art. Next. Yeah, so the name that keeps popping up with these properties is the Price all the same, again, how they spelled it. This was a bordering property. This was part of that deed, James Price. And this is standing right now, established 1720. This is in Lower Salford, right below Vernfield. Next. That's the house. Currently, I don't know if the lady's here that lives in there. I met her, and this is their cemetery, 1720. Again, these are recent pictures. These were just taken. Next. Okay. So now we're into generation 2. Heinrich, or Henry Kolb, generation 2, born 1721. Great Aunt Mamie says about him, Henry Kolb, born 1721, married Elizabeth Castle in 1744. They had 11 children. Elizabeth was the daughter of Yellis Castle, who came to America in 1727. This Henry Kolb had a dyeing and fulling mill on Ridge Valley Creek near Sudneytown. He sold the dyeing and fulling mill and then bought the Kulp farm from the Salford Iron Works. He was the first Kolb, or Kulp, to own the Kulp farm between Vernfield and Salfordville. He made the old Kulp chair that sold at our auction in 1970 for $125. This Henry Kolb and Strong Isaac Kolb were brothers. Then she wrote, so I didn't know this. Dyeing and fulling was a process, was a business where they would take the spun wool, weave it into a fabric or a garment. Then they would take it, and because the wool, it needed to be treated. Again, I don't know the full process, but it involved heat. It involved some kind of solution that you'd put the wool in, and then you'd press it. It made it dense, made it more waterproof, and it made it a lot more durable and functional. So it was a business, and he had a mill. Probably wasn't a big mill because it didn't take up a lot of room, but he sold it and bought the farm. Now, she also wrote that he had a brother, Isaac Kolb. He was born in 1711. He married Gertrude Ziegler, no dates. They had 9 children. They lived on a farm near North Wales. He was a bishop at the Mennonite Church Plains and is believed to be buried in the Plains Mennonite Cemetery. He was a very strong man and had the nickname of Strong Isaac Kolb. This Isaac Kolb is not in our line of Kolb history. Thank you, Aunt Mamie. Next. All right. So this one then, this was the deed for Henry to the farm. 1768, that's down there. Yeah, on that deed, it says it's from Henry Panabaker, P-A-N-I-B-A-K-E-R, Panabaker, to Henry Kolb in the township of Perkiomen and Skeepak County. That's what it says. So, even on some of these deeds, it's spelled one way here and another way down here, and the same with the names. It's crazy. This was for 114 acres with the usual allowance of 6%. That's in a number of these early deeds. You had to allow for 6% of your land to be used for a community road, which the farm did. It was sold 114 acres for 550 pounds. Next. This is just more of that same deed. So, yeah, these are cool. These are really cool. So this is the surveyor's draft or draft survey. These are not on parchment. These are on what was called rag paper. It's linen, but it's recycled linen that you would take, they didn't waste anything. And linen made from flax, very, very labor intensive. Once you couldn't patch your garments anymore, you took them to the paper maker. He did something, he puts it in a magic solution there and press it into paper. So these are in those frames. When you hold them up, you can see through them. And they would have typically there would be pressed into it would be the maker's seal. Now, what happened here, this is really interesting because he bought 114 acres, but when he resurveyed it, and this is what it says in there, resurveyed in 1766 by David Schultz, for the same tract was granted to George Frederick in 1756, but therein said to contain 114 acres, which error must have happened by mistake. It was actually 88 acres. So Henry Pennepacker, I don't know if he knew, but he sold him 88 acres, and my great-great-great Henry thought it was 114 acres. Now, again, another side. Well, this is Deacon Jacob, generation 3. Deacon in the Mennonite church in Salford. Born, which one are we on, Kathy? Okay, this is what Great Aunt Mamie says. Deacon Jacob Kolb, he died in 1820 at the age of 75 years and 5 months. He married Anna Yoder in 1768. She died in 1822 at 78 years old. Both are buried at Salford Mennonite Church Cemetery. So, this is stone up there. There's a lot of Kolbs up at Salford Mennonite, and I have a book that has a tremendous amount of information on them from Salford Mennonite. But this is one, so a couple things on this one. It's one of the few field stones that's up there. It's also, he supported the Revolutionary War. Well, these were pacifists. They didn't get into the war. We're not sure what he did, but he must have supported somehow, either gave food to the soldiers. There's a story that Paul Gerhardt told me about a shot tower where they would at the barn, and I don't know if this was then, but they would drop lead, molten lead down from the second floor. It forms into nice round, perfectly spheres, and they're shots or lead, bullets, lead pellets or shots. So I don't know what he did. It's really unusual. You don't see up in that cemetery very many, any kind of war, but I don't think a soldier, but he probably supported them. Next. What number are we on here, Kathy? So, this Henry, the second generation, he passed the farm down to his son Jacob. Now remember, it's not the 114 acres, it's 88 acres. He actually didn't pass it down. He sold it to him, but he did sell it to him at the same price. He didn't make a profit, sold it for $550. Next. Okay, this one here, his wife signed it, so there's Henry Kulp, his signature. And his wife, instead of her mark being an X or anything, she wrote initials, EK. It looks like my granddaughter's writing, four-year-old, but she wrote initials. That was unusual then. Next. Yeah, so this was, and this is down here too, this is pretty cool. Written again in a very thin kind of linen paper, rag paper. This was a bond between two brothers, Isaac to Jacob, and initially it was for 100. In 1786, they borrowed, or somehow they owed him 100 pounds, and then 3 years later, in 1789, it went to 50 pounds. That's what it says on the outside there, bond, 50 pounds. What is it, shilling and pence, 50.00. And after he paid off the first 50, they must have made a receipt and ripped it off of here, so proof that he paid, even though they were brothers. Right? Which one, Kathy? 32. Jacob, the third generation, he buys now, Jacob, this is Deacon Jacob, right? This guy was, he was very industrious. He buys 24 more acres from Samuel Morris, who lived in Philadelphia. Samuel Morris lived in Philadelphia, but he owned land in Upper Salford. He bought the 24 acres for 160 pounds. And Morris Arboretum, Morris was a big name and still is. He has an estate. The Morris estate is right across the street from Penn Hospital in Old City. Just beautiful. It's a bed and breakfast now. There's a picture of him, Samuel Morris. This is on the deed. This is his signature. Really, again, these are English educated people. And what? Oh, yeah. And being English and educated, his wife could write. As that was his sister-in-law, Catherine Greenleaf. So all of them had really nice penmanship, and probably the women could read and write. Not so with a lot of the Mennonite and the Germans coming over. Yep. Which one were you on? Okay, Deacon Jacob, he buys another 37 acres from William Price. So now he's got 149 acres, so the farm is growing. On this deed, a couple things to note. Again, it's on parchment, beautiful writing, unbelievable. The other thing, it's one run-on sentence. There's no period in here. And to try to make it out it's daunting. But they also list the people. It will say, a miller or a weaver. It lists their occupation after their name. Another thing to point out here, these were handwritten, one of a kind. However, there was a duplicate. It would have been up here that they cut off. So that the two parties, each one got one section. And if there was ever a dispute, you could prove that it was legit, not counterfeit, I don't know how it could be, but you put them together and the edges matched. So that's why they were like that. William Price's signature, again, her name, Price, Katharina, X, her mark. All right, Jacob Kulp, now we're in generation 4. This is a really cool one because this draft, again, we're still in the 1700s here. What number are we on, Kathy? All right. Great Aunt Mamie says, Jacob Kulp, born in 1781, died in 1869, was married to Rebecca Peggy Zink, born in 1781 and died in 1862. Both are buried at Salford Mennonite Cemetery, Church Cemetery. Yeah, so this is, again, one of these rag papers on linen. The cool thing about this, okay, so it tells you again, this corresponds to the deed. It's all the surveyors exactly from this stone to this stone to this tree to this stone to the great oak, And then signed by James Price. So the neighbor, Price, was also a surveyor. And another term that they had was conveyor. So the conveyor was like an early lawyer. He surveyed, he wrote it up, he submitted it to the county for, to be filed. So that guy probably made a lot of money. But this one also, he put a little drawing in. So, again, remember, this is 1780 something, 1789, 86. Here's the house. So this is the Branch Creek. Sandy Aldifers would be down here. Shelley Road would be out here. Vernfield would be up here. But anyway, he drew in, at the time, there was only a house, no barn. It shows a little pasture corral. It shows a little path, which is still there. Now, there's another little building, which I just noticed that. And then this little ditch. Okay, well, this drainage ditch is right here. This is taken last year. It's still there. That's that drainage ditch. This path to the creek was this path here. It went down to the creek. You can still see where it is. There's the creek. And they would take this down, cross the creek, and go up to Salford Mennonite, which was really closer than any of the roads today. It's a straight line. Next. Which one are we on here, Kathy? Yeah, just keep telling me. All right. What? 37. Okay. 1822, yeah. So the deceased, all right, what this one is, deceased, so Jacob died and sold, I guess, but he needed his brothers Henry and John to convey it to his son, which is now Jacob in the fourth generation. 15 acres. Thing to notice here, in 1792, I think, they switched over to U.S. currency. So 15 acres back then was $381. It changed from pounds to dollars. It was still backed by gold and silver. A lot of these deeds say payable in so many pounds, gold or silver. And now it's dollars, gold or silver. Again, just some more drafts. What number are we on, Kathy? Yeah. So this one, all right, this one here, Jacob Kulp and his wife to Henry Kulp, their son. This deed, when you read it, when you get into the heart of it, it says here, and I'm just going to quote what it says, in consideration of the natural love and affection which they have and bear unto the said Henry Kulp the younger. And it goes on to say, Jacob sold the farm to Henry for $1. But had specific instructions were written into the deed that both parents would live out their lives on the farm, and assuming that Jacob were to pass first, Henry, the son, was to provide his mother $1,400 a year plus 5% interest. Each year would go up a little. Also, there were very detailed instructions, such as keeping the winter fire burning for her, keeping the wood pile stocked, fetching items up from the cellar so she didn't have to go down to the cellar, and her liberty to take fruit and other produce from the garden. In other words, take good care of dear old mom. Additionally, it says, as long as she remains a widow. Was that an early prenup or just, I don't know. 39, right? 39? So, this was my great-great-grandfather, Henry Z, sometimes C, depending on who interpreted it, but Heinrich Z, I think it was actually C, but, or no, Z was for his mother's name. Henry Z. Kulp, and Mamie says, Deacon, another deacon, Henry Z. Kulp, born in 1812, died in 1894. Married Elizabeth Landis, she was born in 1818 and died 1891. Both are buried at Salford Mennonite Church Cemetery. He was burned to death while burning brush. He was my grandfather. That was Mamie. We'll get to that story, but he only had one son, and 3 daughters. Look at this. And again, you're dipping a pen in ink, and you don't have white out. You don't make a mistake, but look how beautiful that is written. So that's a draft, and that's the backside of one of these drafts. Tell me the numbers when you get 40. Yeah. So this is another draft now at the time. And again, the surveyor's notes are all on here. It goes around a stone, a tree, you know. So, but this one's interesting because here's the Branch Creek, and for some reason, they were buying and selling ground left and right back then. They were very, very industrious people and always bargaining with the neighbors. But for some reason, this section was cut out. They're going to fill it in later and buy it. But this is where the house and everything was. This is going down towards the Branch Creek again, going down towards the quarry and Vernfield up there. But yeah, so you can see what some of the neighbors were at the time. Sam Smith, David Kriebel, Price again, Jacob Price, Kratz, the widow Nice, Abram Hunziker, Jacob Kratz, and David Hildebeitel. That's another name that shows up a lot, Hildebeitel. Next. So which one is this guy? Yeah, so these two are from 1846 to Hildebeitel to Deacon Henry. Deacon Henry was buying up land now. Here he buys 50 acres for $2,700, and that works out to $54 an acre. And the next one, okay, that was the deed. Here, this one here, which one is this one, Kathy? Huh? 43? Yeah, so this is just a deed. Again, you'll see these up here. Yeah. This one here, he's buying 16 acres and 40 perches. So a perch, it's laid out in rods and all that, but 160 perches are an acre, just so you know. So that would be one quarter of an acre. 16 and a quarter acres for $455. The previous one was $54 an acre. This is only $28 an acre. Again, you know, they're working deals. Yeah, so, okay, so that was the deed. Now, this one here, this is the Price, okay? James Price. He's the guy that did all the surveying, right? He's the neighbor. Nice guy. They must get along real good. Well, until the cattle come across the creek onto the farm. They had to get and sign and seal a little agreement that said James Price will build a fence to keep his cattle from coming over the creek. It goes on in here to say he'll maintain it, he'll fix it, he'll do all these things, and do not let the cattle come over onto the farm. Okay, you got to tell me the numbers. All right. So this is in 1862. Abe Hunziker sells to Deacon Henry another 36 and 3/4 acres for $2,175. $59. That works out to $59 an acre. And here they did a little math, acres and perches. 20. So again, if you look at the survey, it might have been 2 little plots put together, 36 acres, 1862. Now this one, which one? Okay. Not sure of the date on here. I have to take a look. Oh, same deed. Yeah, so 1860. Now they're going to paper. This is no longer the sheepskin. They call it parchment paper. It's thicker paper than we have today, and I'm not exactly sure how it's made. But again, here's Elizabeth Hunziker, her seal, X. And it's kind of a form now. You still have some of this real nice writing, but there's a form, and this is printed and not written. So this is the first now we're seeing a pre-printed form. It's thinner parchment paper. It doesn't have, these are straight edges. It doesn't have the matching anymore. And they drew in the seals. They're not wax. So what's going on in the township at that time? Again, we have no shortage of stone everywhere you look. And these were some of beautiful bridges that were built and are being restored by Montgomery County. Ted could tell you about it. But local stone bridges built in the mid-1800s. Perkiomen at Green Lane, 7 arches. That's part of the Perkiomen Trail now. It's not open for cars or anything. Look, these are all been rebuilt. They're just beautiful. This one's the Swamp Creek, right before at Zieglersville, right where the Swamp Creek comes into Perkiomen at Delphi. This is now part of the trail. This is going to be part of another trail going up that way along Swamp Creek. And this is one where I was fishing. I caught a couple trout under here, Upper Perk. This is the Upper Perkiomen at Palm. But they're all part of Montgomery County. If you go on and you can see the bridges, they're all numbered. They have designated certain bridges as historic landmarks. And this is one in our township here, Upper Salford. Berge Bridge. It's just beautiful, and I'm sure you all know and been over that. This was part of, and still is part of the road system, but it was the turnpike. Back then, it was the Springhouse to Sudneytown Turnpike. And Ted and I were just talking about the Berge Historic District down there. Okay, that's looking over the Berge Bridge, but that's the Sudneytown Bridge, the new one now, which came in later. Here's the plot for Berge, or the stone there for Berge. This says Shelley Road. So Shelley Road Bridge, its claim to fame on it was, it was the very first, it's built in 1900, it was the very first concrete, all concrete bridge. Before that, they were stone or iron or wood. So a lot of the first ones were covered bridges, wood. Some were iron, the smaller ones, the bigger ones were stone. Now they're going to concrete. That bridge has been rebuilt, I don't know when, not recent, I don't know when, but that's been rebuilt. But in 1900, it was the first all-concrete bridge in Pennsylvania. So, Hilda Beidel to Deacon Henry. Deacon Henry's buying 10 more acres. This is woodlands, $100 an acre. He buys 10 acres of woodland for $1,000. Again, now we're on printed paper, printed in Philadelphia. A couple things that are kind of unique on this one. This seal. To register, it must have been, it seems, it's a stamp. I'm sorry. This is a stamp for $1 to the, here we go. It's a pre-printed form on the deed itself. This was $1, I think, to probably to register it with the county, but it's paid to the U.S. Internal Revenue. What? Yeah, Internal Revenue. $1, and it's signed by both parties. This was HK for Henry, and there's the date. So, yeah. Where are we at, Kathy? Just some more, again, just some more, another 10 acres of that 10-acre land, a draft. Beautiful writing. So here, A and P, 8 acres, 22 perches. Here's 7 acres, 119 perches. Again, they're Abram, Price, Kulp, buying some more land. 8 acres there, 15 acres here in 1871. Here it is, 15 acres, 56 perches. The neighbors, Jacob Kratz, Berge, Kulp. So Henry Kulp is adding on. Henry Kulp. So he's bringing in fields, or mostly fields. Okay, in 1893, so here we are in 1893. This was a map. It's in the Upper Salford book, which is a really good resource. In 1892, Upper Salford and Salford. On this map over here, it's one big township, but they had split into 2 townships. So now Upper Salford Township had had the major villages were Salfordville, and I was telling Dawn that Salfordville at the time was bigger than Souderton was just farms. Back in the early 1800s, all these towns were bigger than Souderton because Souderton was just farms until the railroad came in. But in 1893, we had Salfordville, Branchville, Mechanicsville, Henrick Station, and Salford Station. They were the major places, but you also had the railroad. That's what brought stuff here, and the Perkiomen Creek. There were mills all along there. Zooming in, this was the Kulp farm. You can see the neighbors. You got Nace, Landis. This was Isaac Landis, 53 acres. That became Farringer's farm. This was the house and the barn right there. Those two dots. That was the lane, and so this is interesting. This was the road that came across the creek. There's a place here they called Moser's Rock, but down here I think they called it Hildebidal Ford. They came across the creek. There was no bridge. You could drive across the creek and it came up here. Now, I don't know if this was what this was at the time in 1893. It might have been a covered bridge. I don't know, a wooden bridge. I don't know what it was. It wasn't called Shelley Road because there's no Shelleys. Lynn Shelley hadn't moved in here yet, so I don't know what the road was called. This was a major road from Skipback to Sumneytown. This was the turnpike that came, this was the turnpike, Springhouse to Sumneytown. This was the bridge. This was a happening place. It had a mill. All these places had mills, big time. Henry Kulp at the time had 109 acres, but that's in Upper Salford. He also had land in Lower Salford, so I don't know. I think it was around 150 acres at that time. So, which one? 57? Yeah. Okay, so he said, and Aunt Mamie said he died in a fire. This was in an article in the newspaper back then, 1894. I'll just condense it. It's really interesting reading because it's written how they would talk back then. But in December 14th, Henry Kulp, he was aged 82. He lived with his son. I think he was a widower at the time, on the farm near Bergie, which is where I just showed you. He did not show up for dinner. So that farmhouse was two residences. And typically, when we lived there, my grandfather lived on the other side, and they would do that. So the younger one would move on one side, and the parents on the other side, right? So Henry Kulp, and then they would eat, a lot of times you'd eat together, or if you weren't talking, you'd stay separate, but... Henry Kulp, aged 82, lived with his son on the farm near Bergie. He did not show up for dinner that night, so they went out to find him. And I was always told this story. And it was up on the hill in the fields. They would clear brush and weeds and whatever, and they'd burn it. So they found him near a smoldering heap of brush. His clothes were burned from his body. What's also interesting is, and I will read this, it says, so if you read the article, the supposition, it says here, his boots, the wristbands of his clothes, and his collar were all that was left of his wearing apparel. His coat was found nearby. The sleeves were burned off near the elbows, indicating probably the coat caught fire and he took it off to save himself. As stated, there was no positive explanation could be given for this terrible accident. The supposition is he attempted to scrape or push the dying embers together with his foot and his trouser caught on fire. Squire William Slaughterer of Upper Salford on Friday held an inquest. The jury rendered the verdict an accidental death by burning. Mr. Kulp leaves one son and two daughters. So apparently they might have figured, well, maybe they wanted to get rid of the old man. But the story I heard, and believe me, I burn a lot of brush. I know how this could happen. So next. We do believe it was an accident. 50 what? 8? Yeah. So now we're into Henry L. Kulp. He's the 6th generation. Great Aunt Mamie says, Henry L. Kulp, my father, son of Deacon Z. or C. Kolb and Elizabeth Landis. He was born in 1852 in Upper Salford Township, town of Salfordville. He died in 1914. He married Kate Freed Frederick in Franconia Township, 1876. So this was my great-grandfather, and he had 10 kids, including my grandfather Ryan and great-aunt Mamie. Okay, this was a picture that's in the Upper Salford book. And this was Henry and his brother and their horses. So these were draft horses. This was the machinery of the day. And they're good-looking horses, and you know, that's where the term of horsepower comes from. There's some horsepower. Okay? This was their, Henry. Now here it says Henry C, I think, Kulp, Henry C. Sometimes it said Z. Next. He married a Frederick. So this was his son and my grandfather. And this apparently a big snow in 1904. And this is not my grandfather. This is my great-grandfather, Henry. Yeah. This is my great-grandfather, Henry Kulp, with the local guys shoveling out the lane. They all have, looks like Upper Salford shovels are all the same shovel there, but I don't think there were too many places to buy your stuff, or whoever made them. They were all the same, but they'd get together and dig out the roads. Next. Yeah, so this is generation 7 now. This is my grandfather, Ryan, that's him, and 2 of his brothers. And Ryan was born in 1889. He was one of 10 children. Yep, and there's his brothers. Yeah, so the Salfordville schoolhouse right there, it's part of Ramers now, right? It's the Ramers. Was opened in 1880. This is a photo again from the township book. A large crop of students and 4 of the Kulp children. This was Jacob, another Jacob, and there's another Henry, but Jacob, and then Ryan, he was 8 years old there, that's my grandfather. Maurice, which his name I think is Morris, they call him Maurice here, but we always call him Morris, Uncle Morris, and Katie. So there's 4 of the 10 right there. Yeah, Morris. So another interesting thing that we don't have an answer for is, these were a really strict line of Mennonites, all the way down. Pastor, minister, deacon, another deacon. And now my grandfather was not. He went, and he did go to church, but he became Reformed. And he went in the service, so I don't believe it was his brother, World War I. So I don't believe he was Mennonite at this point. I'm guessing Reformed, but I don't know for sure. The other thing is, if you go back, he was a clerk. He was a livestock handler. He worked on the railroad. He was a house painter, and he probably worked on the farm too. These guys didn't sit still. And he was in World War I. Okay, this is my grandfather, Ryan. This is a cool picture from the township book again. He was age 16 there. He was 16. The farmers would all get together. Now, this is in, what year, 1905. Now they got equipment. So now they're filling silos with a conveyor run off of, I don't know, steam, gasoline. It wasn't a horse, I don't think, at this point. But they would take this equipment, you see it's on wheels, they'd move it from farm to farm. Not each farmer had one. Whoever did got paid handsomely to move it around and help the others. But they'd all get together, do one farm, then move to the next. So this is here's some guys on horses back here. There's some horses. There's a guy on a horse, or mules. And and it's corn fodder. What they're doing, they're cutting fodder and putting it up. Yeah, so the story here is, when Jake Olschlager bought his first tractor, a John Deere in 1940, the Salfordville farmer had no modern wagons to attach to it. His son, Willard, jerry-rigged a way to bring home a load of corn fodder slowly in a wagon left over from the horse-drawn era. Even as many local farmers moved to tractor power in the years between the world wars, most retained at least one team of horses for certain duties. Among them was Olschlager's neighbor, Ryan Kulp, who used to say, "To cultivate and make hay, I'd rather have horses." So that was, and there's a load of corn fodder, corn stalks, waiting to be fodder. This, though, was something that I found really cool. Was we don't know who, when, where. It was drawn. It was stuck in, again, the family Bible. Somebody drew this. I'm assuming my family. All it says is next June. There's no date. There's no name. But isn't that, it just shows how it was. There's your team of 2 horses. Look how big they are compared to the man. Look at the pile of straw, hay, whatever they're bringing in. Guy on top, and there he is with a hay rake, putting it in piles. They weren't bales. So talk about labor intensive. There you go. But the drawing is just, to me, is really priceless. These are some things I have that were from our family. This is called a hexelbunk. It was passed down. Nobody wanted it. I ended up with it. I love it because it's handmade. And blacksmith forged the metal. This was a little rake. You put the corn stalks in there. You pushed them with this little hand rake, and you sliced them off. There was a foot pedal. This thing came down to hold them. You'd slice them off. That was hand cutting into fodder. And there's your hay rake, all made out of wood. Whether they made them on the farm or the neighbor made them, but everybody worked together in a community and made everything work. And a lot of times it was barter too. I'm paying you with eggs. I'm paying you with pork. I'm paying you with scrapple, whatever. So this is my grandfather. This is my grandmother, who I never got to meet or know because they were married in 1912. Her name was Mary Alice Oberholzer, and she died 2 years before I was born. I don't really know the situation, or what happened, but I never met her. It's her wedding certificate. Yeah, so this is me at up in Old Goshenhoppen Cemetery, graveyard. Pardon me? 69. All righty. Anyway, this is showing, this was my Alice and Ryan's children. On his tombstone, Reinhardt and Alice, she died in 49, he died in 79. These 3 died as infants. This one never even got a name, died at birth, infant. But Vincent Leroy, he died, he lived from September to December. So he lived a couple months. Infant, huh? And then she lived 4 days. Anyway, I get caught up. Just some mortgages. So again, showing my grandfather, he a bond and warrant, a mortgage, same thing. He borrowed, or somehow he owed this lady $2,500, Sarah, nice over in Burnfield. And this is how he kept track of it. Every year he'd pay her and write it down. And on the back of this, it goes all the way down with each year that he paid. That was their records. Okay, 1924. Other one-room school. Yeah, this is the one-room schoolhouse again up in Salford. There's a happy group of kids. There's my Uncle Sam. Doesn't he look happy to be there? So one-room schoolhouses in Upper Salford were at Mechanicsville, Waxhaw, Salford Station, Hendrick Station, and Bergie. And this is Ella May, which is my aunt, my uncle, and my mother was too young to be in this picture. So Sam and Ella May. Yeah. Uncle Sam married Marianne Kulp. They had 1 child, 1951, same year I was born. I lived on the farm. He lived right next to us. I was born. His son was born and died. It was, I don't know, I was little. It was shocking to say the least. It became a major issue in their lives. And go on, next. Anyway, she ended up leaving, and he kind of went off the deep end to some extent. He threw my grandfather out. And he came to live with Ella May until she passed away. Then Pop came to live with us, that little ranch house. Jim and I had to go down the basement. They made a bedroom down there for us. Pop moved in the back room. He'd sit in his rocking chair and look out to his farm that was no longer his farm, that should have been his farm for the rest of his life. And Sam had built that little building and sold the farm. But Sam and Ryan, up to that point, were big in the fire company. They were founding. Ryan was one of the founding members of the firehouse. He was a trustee. And at this point, in 1952, when it was dedicated, Sam was the assistant fire chief. We never saw anything from the money from the farm, so the family never saw anything. We never talked. Sam never talked to us. We never talked. My mom was his brother. They lived next to each other. They never talked. I never talked to him. I did, but I wasn't supposed to. Sam, as the fire company, we believe the money went to the fire company. That's fine. That's great. They bought the tombstone. His father, Ryan, never went to the funeral. And they never spoke either. And my grandfather would sit in that rocking chair and look out there. I can only imagine what he was thinking. But what they put on his tombstone said, in a world full of copies, Sam was one of the originals. That was very kind of them to say that. And any of you that know Sam will attest. He was one of a kind. This was my mom, Gladys Pauline Kulp. This is where the Kulp line name ends because Sam only had one son. No other kids. His wife left him. He never remarried. Sold the farm. Gladys Pauline Kulp, my mom, born 1929, lifelong resident. Worked at the Spring Mountain House as a teenager. She was the only one to go to college. She went for like 1 year. Her mom died. She had to come back home, work on the farm, and take a lot of grief from her dad, Ryan. He was tough. He was a tough guy. But she met my dad, her husband, Howard, while she was working over at the Spring Mountain House. And then she later worked up the road at NW Controls. So this picture was 1940, 6th grade. That's my mom in 6th grade. So here they are getting married. She marries Howard Landis. His family, very similar, came out of Switzerland, Germany, up through Skipback. I mean, they intercrossed so much. The whole Landis thing is a whole other story. But they were married in 1949 at the Valley Forge Chapel. He had just gotten out of World War II, came back from Japan, and got married at Valley Forge Chapel. Just beautiful, beautiful pictures from there. They had 3 of us, me, Christine, and James. And she died right before Christmas 2000. That's their tombstone up in Old Gosh. There I am, 1951, born on 4th of July. 5 years on the farm, and we moved into the house on Shelley Road in 1956. That picture was down at the farm. Now, reminiscing. So, go down. What's there now? Well, I went down there. This was last fall. That's not really where the house was. There's no house. There's no barn. There's no trace of anything. It's gone. There's trees. There's bushes. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but the only thing I could find was the well because it's still the spring water still coming out where the pump was. There's a few little rocks and some concrete here and there, but it's gone. But what do I remember? So I have remembrances of the farm, and like I said, it was a 2-story. It was a big house, 2 families, 2 separate, dividing wall in the middle. It was a full porch. I remember it dropped off. I remember riding a little tractor and went off the edge and down, fell down. So again, this was from that picture, and you could see a carriage coming down the lane there. Next. 1952, I would have been 1 year old. I have a picture where I'm sitting on his lap. This was down at the farm. You can see there are big windows, some kind of wall covering, fancy rugs, radiators, and that's Pop. So there's me on, so they used to board horses there. Again, Sandy Aldifer was telling me he used to ride horses down there. They'd board horses. He was working at Lenny Shelley's. They'd bring feed up. This guy here was known in the township. He was a super neat guy. I think he came out of Philadelphia, but he boarded this horse Buddy there. And that's me on the horse. He would come up and he'd ride all around the town and everything, and everybody. He was a real gentleman. 1955, this is down at the farm. That's me. That's my cousin, Nancy. There's the old radiators, steam. And there's Pop at his 66th birthday on the farm. Again, what I remember? I do remember having, picnics there. I remember playing I'd go out for just all day down at the creek. Horses, pigs, they'd slaughter, they'd make scrapple, they did all that. We'd have events, people would come down, relatives. Again, this was probably maybe before I was born or right around then. There's the equipment barn, and the big barn was over here. Yeah, okay, here's the big barn. They had some pigs and stuff down here. And then this was a double bank barn. It was one of the biggest barns in the area. They didn't do dairy. They had cows, they had horses, pigs, chickens, and they did not have milk. Warren Long was the dairy farmer that had milk, was up there. So again, they would trade. And I think there were a lot of dairy farms and creameries in the area, but they did not do dairy. But the double bank barn was big enough that the neighbors stored hay in there when their barns were full. And in this picture, remember that picture with the machinery with the silage? They're probably waiting for that guy to come down and park it right here and pump it up into the silo. And there's your corn stalks, again, from probably one of those big wagons. But, doing all that by hand. You can imagine, that's all cut and moved by hand. So that's my dad. Again, he's back from the war. We're down at the creek. He loved to hunt and fish, great hunting. Not so much fishing, but yeah, great hunting. Beautiful. I played by the creek all the time. Same time, 1952, looking back up at the farm from the Branch Creek. So here's your chicken coop over here. Chickens were out here. This is the corn crib. There's the silo. This is the bank barn. All the livestock and everything was down below. All the hay and everything was up top. This was like an equipment barn. This was the house. There was a little addition on here. This was where the porch, where I ran when I came off the edge of the porch. It was right there. And then this was just some kind of sheds. I don't remember what these were or what they were used for. Probably in the early days it was a carriage shed. And it probably remained just as a general shed. Then so looking at this from the Branch Creek, the Sandy Aldifer and the Aldifers would be down here on this side. And then going up the hill would be NW Controls, Warren Long. And going out this lane would be Shelley Road. So from Shelley Road, you couldn't see this farm. It went up and over the hill. It was beautiful down there, and it was private, very private. And it made a great place for the biker gang that came in there after the farm was sold. For them to hang out and hide. Okay, this, again, 1952, picture of the Branch Creek. You'll see the new pictures from this year that looks pretty much the same. Beautiful. Here we are, winter at the farm. This is the lane going out. Right now, when you go down there, you can't even hardly see that there's a lane. It's totally overgrown with trees and brush. This lane now went up, and Shelley Road was out here. And it wasn't a straight road either. Shelley Road the lane came out, and Shelley Road made a jag at the time, and then later they straightened it out. So there's Christine. That's okay. And here's Eddie Cressman. He gets a toy gun, I get a stick. That's me, that's Eddie Cressman. Okay, here it is in 2023. This is the Branch Creek. Now they do pump water, so the Branch Creek gets a little bit more flow because of the pumping station. They're pumping over a Limerick, but it's basically the same. This is going south into lower Salford, and if you go up the hill, it'd be Vernfield, up where the flag is. When you come out this way is where the farm was. So this is me standing down there, remembering how I used to play there as a kid. I'd spend all day down at the creek. Okay, this is this is new. This is last year. Looking upstream, we said Moser Rock. That's Moser Rock. This is where I think they forded from Burnfield. They would come across because it's low there, and that would come over into Alderfer's properties. This is looking downstream, and that road, that path that goes down along a branch creek came along here, and it crossed somewhere down in here, and then it went up and over to Salford Mennonite. And it was actually, like I said, a very short path to Salford Mennonite. This was the meadow. So again, the creek is down in here. This would be looking from the house. This was one of the meadows. And this is pretty much where they let the cows and the livestock and the horses out to. Yeah, this is new. My brother took this a year ago. This was the path that was the Lenape Indian Trail. Then it was used for horse and wagons. Then it took the deacon up to church. Then it was used for deer hunting, still is. It's great deer hunting. And then my brother and his band of hoodlums used to ride their dirt bikes down in there. So, and Jack Young might have been one of them. I don't know. All right. So what happened to it? So this is let me go over here. This one. So what happened to it? Well, here's 1958. That's actually should be, I think, that might have been when we moved in. 56 when he built it. I think we might have moved in there. Anyway, 1 acre lot, not quite, on the northwest corner of the farm on Shelley Road. In the 1960s, Sam Kulp sells the farm to developers. At the time, Ken Kratz wanted to build a hunting club in there, but it never came to fruition, and he ended up buying somewhere else. And Collins, out of Lansdale, Collins Real Estate bought the farm, petitioned the township, Ted will know about this, petitioned the township for permission to establish a mobile home park and/or townhouse development. Ted will explain all that, but he didn't really want the mobile home. He wanted to put in dense housing, so it was a game he was playing. However, he didn't know who he was playing with because the township didn't want any of that, and at the same time then, they formed Citizens for Open Space. With the help of somebody that had a little bit of money, Drew Lewis, Ted Poche got his chops there, and Gladys, my mom, was very active in that group. They fought Collins. You don't see any townhouses or trailer park there. So it was a long legal process, and I don't know exactly. You guys could fill in the blanks from here, but that was during the 70s and the 80s. 1975, the Telford Diving Unit on Shelley Road opened their doors on the lot from Sam Kulp. In the late 1800s, in the 1980s, THP bought 305 acres or thereabouts of farmland, which included the Kulp Farm, Warren Long, and Stutzman properties. They're up on Old Skippack Pike. It basically forms an L. Again, beautiful farmland, woods, and creek. I was telling Ted, it should be a township or county park and trail system. And I don't know if any of the Mascaras are here today, but I think, it'd be worth discussing that and looking into the possibilities. THP bought that. They were looking to build a golf course. It needed water, sewer to do all these things, townhouses, luxury homes, whatever. It was all being negotiated until THP went bankrupt, went belly up. At that point, they had leveraged it for a lot of money, and Mascaro came in and bought it for, pennies on the dollar, as they say, but he bought it at a reasonable price and is keeping it in an agricultural preserve at this point, some type of agreement for agricultural land, which is great. Plug for Ted go back, Kathy. Plug for Ted. Since 1993, in January, Ted Poche became the township supervisor, and I just want to commend him. He's doing a great job for keeping the township and keeping everything open for you guys. 2009, THP files for bankruptcy. Property is taken by the banks. 2011, Lou Mascaro, one of 5 brothers of J.P. Mascaro and Sons, and they have their own property division, bought the property for approximately $3.3 million and put the land into agricultural security district. So that's where it stands right now. I did talk to, I reached out to Mascaro's. Again, I don't know if Jay Mascaro came, but to me, that land is kind of sacred land, not only because I grew up there, but if you walk down there, it will give you a feeling of, you don't see any houses. All you see is the creek and the wildlife. And you think back to when those arrowheads were there, when they were shooting, you know, indigenous people were living peacefully along there. And then all these generations of my family came through. It's not my family anymore, but it's just a beautiful place. So anyway, that's the story. I hope I kept it somewhat interesting. And I didn't get the shock collar, so I tried to keep it moving. But I will, I don't know if we have any time. I want you to know you can come up and look at all these different things that I showed in these pictures. And I want to really thank Kathy for doing this. These are the references. And? Huh? Oh, yeah. So these are the references I used. I will also make a plug here for, where's Nani's book? This one here. The Family of Wilson Stirley and Mary Reif. It goes on. Natalie Otter Barnes is here, so she can talk to you about that book. That goes back to Germany, and then it branches out into a lot of other families, so that book's here. And she has copies available if anybody wants that. Great for genealogy. You'll see all the names in there. Okay. One other thing is, this is for another time, but this is a map that my brother has, and we're going to donate this to the township when the time is right. One condition is that it gets hung on a wall. Franconia Heritage Center would gladly take this, but they told me, we can't hang it, we don't have a place. We'll roll it up and put it in our archives. They have the same map in black and white down there, but it's all tattered and torn, it's rolled, and it's rolled up. This one's in really, really good shape. 1848? 1848. When you look at this is when Upper Salford was all one. They didn't split off Salford Township yet, 1848. When you look at this closely, all the names, this was done from the census of the time. All the landowners' names are on here. The Kulps are on here and everybody else. You know, if your family was living in the area and owned land, you'll probably see. You'll also see there was really no Souderton at the time. It was farms. But this is really a cool map, 1848. Okay. Yeah. And yeah. So one other plug we're going to make is for, my wife is going to do this, but in July for the Historic Society, we're going to do a talk at the church, up at Old Goshenhoppen Church Pavilion, on the oyster picnic, the history of the oyster picnic. 147 years. From 1877, this picnic has run consecutive for 147 years. So Kathy's going to do that. We're trying to gather stories as well. So if you have any stories that go back through the history of that picnic and you'd like to share them, please write them down or see Kathy. That's going to be on July 22nd for the Historical Society.
And the pavilion is now air conditioned.
Yeah, so it's going to be in the pavilion and air conditioned, and we'll do a presentation there. So that's it. Like I said, you're welcome to, show and tell. So if we have any time, I'll just ask if anyone has any questions or comments. And if not, yeah. Persecution, yeah. The Mennonites, the Reformation, Reformed and Lutheran were being persecuted by the Catholics, but they in turn didn't look too favorably on the Anabaptists because of doctrine differences. And the Mennonites, the Amish, they were the lowest denominator, and it was persecution and an opportunity in a new land. So their farms were being taken over there in that area. It was just taken. And so when they had the opportunity, they came over and made good advantage of it. They had a tough time though. Yeah. All right, that's about all I have. Okay, yeah, what?
What's the total acreage of the Kulp farm?
It depends. It varied. These all varied, but well, when it was sold, it was around 109, 110, and then, but at the largest, it was 150 some I saw. But with all these little parcels being bought and sold, I couldn't, believe me, it was mind-numbing to go through all this and try to figure it out. So, and it changed from year to year, it kept changing. Tommy.
Greg, the farm that your grandfather lived on is now
Gone.
gone?
Well, in between this, when I mentioned bikers, so when the realtors owned it, they rented it out. My friend Jerry Schmidt, and they lived there for a while. They were upstanding people. Then they rented it out to, who was it, Bo? Well, we're not going to get names, but it turned out to be, when they rented it out, you couldn't see this place. Well, perfect place for a biker gang to do whatever they were doing down there, which brought in the SWAT team one year. What year was that? The SWAT team came in and cleaned it out. That was the beginning of the end. At that point, they were like, the property's worth money, the building is not, and they leveled it.
And they didn't have wooden guns.
They did not have wooden guns or sticks. They were not toy guns or sticks. That was a rough bunch that was down there at the time. I was in college, thank goodness. I didn't know anything about that. Jimmy knows, but.
They have a lot of German shepherds.
A lot of German Shepherd. Yeah, and guys would go deer hunting there. My friends would go down there deer hunting. Well, you'd go down there deer hunting. You were the one being hunted by the biker gang. You did not want to get close to that house, right? They came out armed, and you didn't mess with them.
They have a sign on their porch that said trespassers will be shot, survivors will be shot again.
Right. So there you know. Yeah, there you know. Good. Yeah, thanks for that. All right, that's it for me. Thanks.
We'd like to thank the Landers family for all their time and effort. They put in an awful lot of time and effort into this program. One other thing, this is the biggest crowd we've had, and thank you all for coming. If there is anybody that lived in this township in the history, that was in the military, we have forms we would like you to fill out. And also, if you have, know somebody that lived here and has now passed, we would also like to have that information because we do a program for Memorial Day and we do a program for Veterans Day. So please, if you have any of that information, take a couple minutes and look at our table out there and see if, there's anything that you can help us out with. It's hard to find deceased people because the newspapers are terribly expensive and you can search funeral homes and you can spend hours looking for funeral homes, but if you don't know the people who lived here years ago, you wouldn't know. So anybody that is here. Our Memorial Day program is the 27th of May in the evening at 7 o'clock at the Township Park. So everybody's welcome to come to that. I'm sorry? Oh, and yes, we would like to thank Pastor Ed and the church for donating the facility for us to use it. They've been very kind to us with letting us use the facility, and chairs are comfortable, air conditioning is wonderful, and it's a great place. So thank you all for coming again.